So the title of my presentation is A Jedi's Guide to CLOMRs and LOMRs. I want to be clear that all of you are the Jedis. So this is everyone involved in projects that have floodplain permitting, especially our consultants and local governments. And I hope you're all enjoying the Star Wars theme today as much as I am. I am a new Star Wars fan. I went through most of my life without seeing any of the movies. But I have my two boys to thank for introducing me to it. And I had to share a couple photos from our recent trip to Disneyland. Star Wars was our favorite part. My goal today is to provide an overview of how the district partners with FEMA, provide answers to common questions about CLOMRs and LOMRs, and let you know what resources are out there to help you get through the map change process. First, I want to introduce the district's core floodplain management team. I'm relatively newly in the role of overseeing floodplain management and planning at the district. Stacy Thompson is the district's floodplain manager and is your go-to resource for any floodplain questions. Hung Tang Ho is the district's hydraulic modeler and is our in-house technical lead for anything modeling related. And Sarah DeGroot is a project manager assisting with CLOMR and LOMR case reviews. Before we jump in, I want to caution that this topic, really anything to do with FEMA, has a lot of acronyms, so I'll do my best to define them as we go. Let's start with how the district works with FEMA. FEMA's Cooperating Technical Partner, or CTP program, is a collaborative approach where FEMA partners with state, regional, and local governments in order to ensure flood maps are accurate and reflect local conditions. Goals of the program include combining resources to maximize public funding, utilizing local knowledge and data, and improving community outreach and engagement to ultimately increase our community's resilience to flooding. There are several activities that fall under the Cooperating Technical Partner, but today I'm going to focus on one specific activity, and that's the LOMR Review Partners Program. Under this program, the district receives an annual grant from FEMA to review CLOMRs and LOMRs locally on FEMA's behalf. This partnership leverages the district's local knowledge, relationships, and resources. And the district was actually the first CTP in the nation to pilot this program with FEMA in 2001. The program has since been formalized and opened up to other CTPs across the country, including our very own Colorado Water Conservation Board, or CWCB, which is now reviewing CLOMRs and LOMRs in Colorado outside of the district. Before I go too much further, I want to define CLOMR and LOMR. A CLOMR is a letter from FEMA commenting that a proposed project meets the minimum standards of the National Flood Insurance Program, or NFIP. A LOMR is FEMA's modification to an effective flood insurance rate map to reflect a constructed project or better reflect existing conditions. So basically, with a project, you do a CLOMR during design and a LOMR after construction. Under this program, it's important that the district's review is objective and consistent relative to the NFIP. We don't have flexibility with the regulations, but we are able to be a local resource for you to help you navigate the process more efficiently. The district utilizes contractors to perform the reviews. Our current contractors are Icon and Michael Baker. Under certain circumstances, FEMA will still review CLOMRs and LOMRs within the district. These scenarios include conflict of interest, certified levies, or if our grant funding is exhausted. We occasionally need to send a few cases to FEMA to bridge the gap until our next year's grant kicks in. I want to clear up a common misunderstanding. The CLOMR process is completely separate from the district's maintenance eligibility program that you've been hearing about today. This can be confusing since both are coming through the district, but internally it's separate teams with a different purpose. As I've stated, the district is reviewing the CLOMR on behalf of FEMA through that NFIP lens. This is a very narrow lens. We are not reviewing the CLOMR submittal with respect to urban stream design, criteria, or approach. So it's important to be aware that your stream project will also need to go through MEP review with the district. One common question we get is when to start your CLOMR. And you'll want to understand the CLOMR timeline when planning your submittal. I took a look at the duration for all CLOMRs that were completed within the district in the last 2 years, and the chart is showing the results. The horizontal axis is duration in months, and the vertical axis is number of cases. You can see that the typical timeline ranges from about 6 to 12 months. Next, your CLOMR submittal should be based on at least 60% design. For hydraulically sensitive projects, you may want your hydraulic modeling closer to 90 to 100%, even if your design plans and the rest of your project is still at 60%. And referring back to my last slide, you want to make sure MEP review is already underway and any hydraulically significant comments have already been addressed before submitting your CLOMR. And finally, local review of the CLOMR is also needed before submitting. The local government needs to know and understand the project, confirm it meets local requirements, and concur with the submittal to FEMA. We also get commonly asked about the expected timeline for a LOMR. Again, this is after construction. Data from the last 2 years of LOMRs indicates about a 4 to 12-month duration until the LOMR is issued. However, LOMRs require a 90-day appeal period that begins after the LOMR is issued and following public notification. So adding this up, you should plan on about 9 to 17 months from your initial submittal to your LOMR going effective. And keep in mind that most local governments won't issue building permits for lots in the floodplain until the LOMR that removes the floodplain from those lots becomes effective. So the district has a lot of ongoing floodplain mapping update studies. We call these flood hazard area delineation studies, and they're shown on the screen. If you're doing a CLOMR or LOMR on a stream with a revised FAD data, you may be required to evaluate the project under both the effective and revised conditions. We will help guide you through the specific requirements for your project. If you have any questions about the effective model or the revised data, reach out to us. We can make sure you have it. All right, get out your notepads. I want to cover the top 3 common mistakes for CLOMRs and LOMRs. And I will say this started out as a top 10 list, but I had to cut stuff out. So if you're interested in the other 7, come find me later. Coming in at number 3, mailing the property owner notifications before the district has had time to review the letters. There's very specific language and other requirements that need to be in those notifications. And if there's any errors, they have to be revised and resent, which is extra work on your part and is confusing to the property owners that are getting multiple notifications. So we ask that you submit draft notifications with your submittal, and we'll review them and let you know when they're good to go. Number 2, waiting until the 90th day to provide additional data. This technically isn't a mistake, but if you wait until the last day, there's no time left in that 90-day regulatory window for informal back and forth in case anything is missing or needs to be adjusted. The due date can't be extended. Submitting early in that window is the number 1 way that you can actually shorten your duration of the CLOMR, so we encourage you to submit earlier. And the number 1 most common mistake is missing the required signatures. The requester, the engineer, and local floodplain administrator for all of the jurisdictions that are impacted need to sign the application before it's submitted. Not doing so will delay the processing of your case. Now that I've covered mistakes, I want to share what resources are available to help you. The first is our letter of map change guidelines. It's available on our website and was just updated. This provides specific information about the CLOMR and LOMR process and should be referenced before submitting. Another resource that's actually geared more towards large watershed scale studies is our flood hazard area delineation guidelines. This can be a helpful resource for more detailed floodplain modeling and mapping questions you have. And I'm excited to share that we have released a brand new fact sheet that you can find on our website, and it's based on one of the most common questions we get. When are LOMRs and CLOMRs required? Here's a few highlights, but I encourage you to go check out the fact sheet. First off, it's good to know that when determining LOMR and CLOMR requirements, most Zone A floodplains within the district are not actually approximate Zone As. Most are model-backed and regulated like detailed studies. So a LOMR is required for any BFE increase or decrease greater than 3/10 per our state rules. CLOMR requirements depend on if there is a floodway. If there is a floodway and any part of the project is in the floodway, then a CLOMR is required for any BFE increase. That's 0.00 feet. If there's no established floodway, a CLOMR is required for a BFE increase greater than a ½ foot. Keep in mind that you also need a CLOMR or LOMR anytime it's required by the local government, as some of our local governments have higher standards. But even if a CLOMR isn't required, there are several situations where it's still just a good idea to get a CLOMR. Number one, if your project shifts or expands the floodplain, even if there's no BFE increase. Number two, a goal of your project is flood hazard reduction. In this case, it's good to get FEMA's review of the design to make sure it will meet the intended goal. Three, your project is hydraulically sensitive or very close to triggering a CLOMR. The concern here is that design or field changes could result in your as-built project not being in compliance. Four, the floodplain administrator can't verify the project impact to ensure compliance. And five, if a change to hydrology is requested. I'd like to share one of my project experiences that highlights the importance of the CLOMR. This was a district-led project, and it was intended to be a simple culvert replacement on Leiden Creek at Alkire Street in Arvada. But the project never got constructed. Why? Because we couldn't get the CLOMR. Let me explain. And before I go off of this, the culvert's undersized, and you can see it floods during storm events. That was really the driver for this project. Sorry, get on the right slide. It's not advancing. Okay, the project included replacing the undersized 54-inch culvert with 4 new 12-foot by 4-foot culverts, which would have the capacity to convey the 100 flow. Initial modeling indicated a no-rise, which wasn't surprising since we were increasing conveyance. However, we decided to go through the CLOMR process because a key goal of our project was flood hazard reduction. Through the CLOMR process, it was discovered that the effective mapping was not a good representation of what was actually happening in this area. The left side of the screen shows the effective mapping, and the right side shows our 2D modeling results. While the effective map showed that most of the 100-year flow continued down the creek, in reality, the majority of the flow actually spills to the south, and it's a long way before it rejoins the creek. Upsizing the culvert crossing would reduce flood risk for those homes along the spill path, but it would also send more flow down the creek and increase flood risk to those homes along the creek. To safely convey the water without increasing risk on homes would require nearly a mile of major channel improvements through the private properties downstream. We didn't have enough budget for that. So while it's certainly disappointing that this project isn't able to proceed at this time, thank goodness we discovered the problems before construction. If we had skipped the CLOMR, we would have increased risk on homes and resulted in a FEMA violation. We would have had to mitigate the project's adverse impacts, which may have meant blocking off our newly built culverts. So again, if the goal of your project is flood hazard reduction, don't skip the CLOMR, because the best FEMA violation is a violation avoided. In conclusion, while I think it's safe to say that no one enjoys CLOMRs and LOMRs, they are necessary for depicting flood hazard information, ensuring responsible floodplain development, and ultimately reducing impacts from flooding in our communities. Know that we're in it together, and we're here to help you get through the finish line. We have resources available on our website, can provide the effective FEMA models, and data for ongoing district studies. We also offer pre-submittal meetings and are here to answer any other questions you may have. Thank you.